Okay. Okay.
I quit being like you, so silly.
Now I'm now we're live at different.
Yes, we are. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are so sorry for our delay in our show today, but thank you for tuning in. Whether you're tuning in now or you're going to tune in after rebroadcast, we thank you for joining us on today as we are dealing with the month of June, and we are dealing with men of distinction because these men are powerful in their lives, in their communities, the things that they're doing, and they have always demonstrated excellence in what they have done. So today with me, I have a long time, I'm not going to even say friend, I have a long time family member that is going to be joining us today. The one and only Dr. Daniel Walker is joining us today. Daniel, family and my family, we go way back to the track days of North Fontana from Almeria, Tokay, Jacaranda, Chermoya, and I think I missed one in there, but we were the children of the tracks, and I tell you, we are proud to be. But today I have him come in to represent men with fatherhood and Juneteenth education, and that's because all those things are what he is and what he does. He is truly a man of dissension, which he don't believe he is, but I do. So ladies and gentlemen, you will see me and Daniel for the next 30, 40 minutes talking about everything. So Daniel, the floor is yours.
Hey, Reverend Yo. It is so beautiful to be here. First off, you gave it up already to everybody from the tracks, from North Fontana, areas above baseline, the Millers, you know what I'm saying? The community of Black North Fontana. And for anybody who didn't know, that's what it was, Black North Fontana. That's just a historical reality. And we grew up, and when Reverend Yo says family, because us folk, that's how we see each other. When we see Bishop Kenneth Wells, that's just Kenny Wells, that's family. When we see folk walking down the street, that's family. And we have a sense of coming from that area that we always connect with each other. When students come into my classes, when I used to teach at San Bernardino Valley College or at El Camino College, and I would recognize a name, and the name is like a track's name. Like I remember when I had Vanita and Amber Buffkin's kids in my class, and so the last name was Buffkin. I was like, "Who's your mama? Is it Vanita? Is it such and such?" And these kids looking at me like, "What are you talking about?" I remember when I had Stafford Kirkland's son in my class. You know what I mean? I remember I had all these different people's kids in my classes, and when I see their names, and I'm just like, I know who you are, because that's family. When they go back home and tell family, that's who my professor is, the family just says, "That's Daniel. I went to school with him," or what. This is us. We support, we are down. And so I want to lift that up first off, is this issue of specifically how beautiful it feels to have grown up in a community called North Fontana, the tracks, the area above baseline, whatever it is, because that space made me who I am. So that's.
And people, just before we go deep, but people always, they call it down, what is it, Sierra Lakes, or, you know, the fancy names for it now. That's the tracks of North Fontana.
Yo,
you got a fancy name now.
Boy, they didn't turn Carter Street into Sierra Lakes Boulevard. You know what I mean? People living over there. I live on Sierra Lakes. I'm like, you know that's a trash. You understand that's not a mountain, that's a trash dump? I'm sorry, because I know that somebody here is listening and they go live in Sierra Lakes and it's hilarious.
Let's just be real.
Of all
the little places. Church. I think the church is still up there. I think the church has not moved, because we used to actually walk from Chermoya to the church. So, you know, I just see that and I laugh at it now. Oh, people, I live in Sierra Lakes. I was like, I lived there as a child. It was called the Tracks. Called North Fontana.
A golf course.
Yeah, we had a golf course, all right. From street to street.
Yeah, you find a stick and pretend like it's a golf club and hit a rock.
Yes. It's just we look at life now, and it's just so exciting, especially from North Fontana to where we are now in our lives. It's just amazing how good God is and what he has done for so many of us. So many of our friends didn't make it out. So many of our friends are not alive today, but by the grace of God, we're still here. So for you to not be caught up in the circles of the things that were in the tracks, because it was easy for us to be, caught up in the things of the tracks. But God has brought us this mighty long way to do all the things that we're doing. So I personally, I follow you, but I follow you because you speak true, whether you're speaking at a conference or you're teaching in a church or whatever you're doing, you're always speaking true. So when I did the Men of June, yes, I did it Men of Dissension because that's who I see you as, because I know where we came from. I don't know all of what you went through in adulthood, but I know where we came from as you. So I see you as a role model to anyone that knew you then to knowing you now, and all the ones that don't know anything about you, but how you're coming up now, because you demonstrate how excellence of who we are as a people, especially our Black men now, of this is how we can be and not stigmatized by who they say we are.
Exactly. Well, part of the process for all of us, especially Black folk, is getting past all this junk that we have been put into ourselves, and even in church, right? To where, especially as Black folk, there's been times where either we as men don't show up, right? We only want to be in leadership. If I can't be in leadership, I don't want to be in church, right? You know what I mean? Like, we don't know how to sport, right? We don't really understand that part, right? I got to be the leader or the deacon, or I can't be in the thing, right? I just can't, I can't focus with that, right? But I think, we lose out on a whole lot of models of leadership because we only show one. We got to be in charge. We don't show as much as men servant leadership. I was always, when I was ordained as a minister, I was always very, very uncomfortable with the term reverend. The denomination that I was in, they used to refer to me as elder at times, right? And these were all really, really crazy terms to me because I didn't see any, I never want to be revered. You know what I mean? I never wanted to be, and I also kind of like Dr. King. People don't know, when Dr. King was a kid, Martin Luther King, he never wanted to be a minister because he used to say his dad was a minister, his grandfather was a minister, and he saw the backside of what that meant. He saw, the getting the food first. He saw the, milking the collection plate until it's dry, and the people don't even know if they got their rent paid or their mortgage paid or their kids paid. And so for me, there was a number of things like with that. I never wanted to be like projected on to be either the good or the bad of all that. All I really wanted to be was, my definition was, ministry was a person who tends to the needs of others. And so for me, ministry means that. It doesn't mean anything about elevation. It doesn't mean anything about you get to eat first. It doesn't mean anything about you get to sit down first. It doesn't mean anything about you get to get a big old chair. It doesn't mean anything about all that stuff. Nope. It means the notion of the person who tends to the needs of others. And so for me, if someone wants to refer to me or talk to me or anything about ministry, if they're using that definition, oh, I'm a minister in a minute, I'm a minister. But any other kind of thing, because I just have so many different issues about how in which sometimes we as church bodies stifle women's voices. A huge number of churches, women still can't be ordained in the denomination, right? I don't want to even bring up the issue of LGBTQ. I don't want to even bring up the issue of social justice. Sometimes I don't want to bring up the issue of our ability to connect with our Latino brothers and sisters in the communities in which we live and are never, especially in California, the majority. So we have to go hold hands with somebody else of another faith to get things done. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about any of those things, but if we're talking about distinction being a person who tried to live somewhat of their life with integrity and a person who tried to serve others, oh, I'm a minister in a minute. You know what I mean? I'm all that. But anything else, oh no, I'm just a regular Daniel kicking it, trying to make my way in the world.
Yeah, it's some of us that have those titles, and I always tell people we're all ministers of Christ, whether you have a title or not. A title is something that is man-made, that man put together, and you have to do all these things. And for those of us that are disciples outside of the four walls, and ministers and servants outside of the four walls, we're the ones that the people are more so relating to, because we're not inside the four walls. We're not standing behind the pulpit every Sunday preaching, give this, give that, do this and do that. We're truly trying to be those that God has called to be in the community, to help those that the ones, some church folks do ignore.
Yeah.
And there's so many of us out there.
Yeah. And we're called to a ministry that's 360 degrees. So we need, as prophets, and we need teachers, and we need all these things. And some people do their work inside those four walls, and there are some people who, man, on the inside of them four walls, they do it, and revere. I go, wow, this person, not only the preached word, the sung word, the ability to keep the church congregation going, the ability to be engaged in real ministry that builds houses and stands up for the right issues. There are people who are there. And then I think there are people who are called to the ministry of Jesus Christ, who need to be functioning outside of the church with the calling as the number one thing. So for me, for everything I do around history and bringing folk together or calling out, it is all about everybody trying to get to this point of coming together for me about love. It's about love ethos. Justice for me is about love. You cannot love someone if you don't seek to treat them justly. That right there is when the Bible talks about what is going to be done with the people who either took the dreams of children and jacked them up, right? When God talks about what he will do to those people, right? And we start thinking about the big picture of what we have as a calling of love, and then to put that in everything that we do, whether you work in corporate America, but you start in with the ethos of love, you know, whether you at school district and you start with the ethos of love, it doesn't have to be the ethos of your Christianity right now, but it can be the ethos of love. And you bringing forth the love in the space. And now we can start talking about justice. Because once again, I can't see you destitute on the street and say that I love you. I can't. The Bible says we take care of the orphan, the widow, right? The person. And if we're not doing those things, I can't talk about love. It's performative.
Yes.
It's I love, kumbaya, all the rest of the stuff. You need some, I'll see you later. You know what I mean?
And not that once a year love. Or once because we're putting on something love. We have to show it continually all year long because the God we serve is a God of love. And it's those ministers that are called not even to be in the church. Some are called outside, some are called inside. But you have to know which one you're called to do. Yeah, because once you're inside, you're limited. When you're outside, you're open, free reign.
And that's why I say I love those people who some people are meant to be in that church. They're meant to be that. They're meant to be pastors, and they have that pastoral spirit. They're the person who can get that phone call 2:30 in the morning about somebody's kid being in jail, and they show up.
Yep.
You know, that's a pastor. See, I know I don't have that spirit across the board, meaning I couldn't do it. I couldn't be like, my phone is on
24/7, 365.
But I know people who that is their spirit. They function. That's how they roll. It's a gifting. It's a talent. It's what God has given them. And then there's people like me who more have the evangelistic spirit. At the same time, the notion of building and building things and bringing in people of different faiths and different groups to be able to try to build things. But I think we all are called. Remember, there's so much work to be done in the body of Christ, right? And I just spoke at New Hope Missionary Baptist Church, the venerable New Hope Missionary Baptist Church in San Bernardino, California.
That's where I went to.
Exactly. And the notion of of mental health and mental health awareness month last month, and even being there and talking about that and having a fully developed ministry around mental health, where they recognized literally 20, 30 different people in the congregation who work in mental health, where they lifted up the issue of mental health, where they educated people with real videos from the CDC and other things about what mental health is. And then I came in and brought a word that was transparent about mental health. And then knowing that that word would then filter into some systems that they already had in place at the church. So if somebody was now motivated, a call to action to either step up for themselves or someone else, there was an apparatus there for them to be able to leverage, to be able to get it. That's what I'm talking about. I hate when it's like you do something and people are like, I'm gone. You know, that's the difference. I remember people used to talk about evangelists, like the evangelist comes and they get everybody, riled up, and then the pastor was saying, and I got to fix everything they done broke, or I got to deal with the issue of, the expectations they done brought. I can't do it. I'm both evangelistic, but also the builder dude. Who wants to be like, okay, how do we build some system or something that allows this to happen? And that system may not have the word God in it at the beginning of it, or the end of it, but the spirit of it is there. So I'm with you on that. And I think that we should validate more people who are having these back and forth calling experiences, because they think that the calling has to be in front of the, on the rostrum and preaching the word like that. And because of that, they sometimes get into that and they're not the person for it. And then get kind of pushed out because they're not, quote unquote, good enough. And in reality, their gifting was building the body of Christ in something else. But no one told them that if you could be an accountant for the church, that would be great.
Yeah.
Because we need to figure this thing out. If you could handle our finances and our, equitably and with some integrity, this would be great. You could run the ministry that we have here around education, and that would be great. You could be the person, you might have a job that calls you doctor and mister and all the rest of stuff, but you might have a spirit of service and you're the parking lot attendant at the church and you treat people with respect, and that's what you give to the body. So I think that issue of letting everyone know that there are all these spaces, not only in the church body, but that means the church body, universal, of where we can step in. I always give people an example. One time I used to be, I was all in, full-time ministry, and I was, at a church, and I had a title and all the rest of the stuff. And I remember I was at a friend's bachelor party, and I was conflicted. Should I be here? It's a bachelor party. Should I be here? Oh my God, if God forbid that somebody in the church see me up in this bachelor party. And I'm saying this because this wasn't no just bachelor party, it was a bachelor party. Strippers. I'm saying this because I want somebody to be like, it was a bachelor party, like we was at BJ's and everybody was passing around drinks. And I'm talking about this is a butt naked bachelor party. All right, I'm just being real. So I'm sitting in there, right? And I'm trying to, and there's a part of me was going back and forth, I'm staying in another room, get a little peek, all the rest of this kind of stuff. Then a dude comes into the room with me, and I'm just sitting there. I had a drink. I'm just chilling. And he tells me, and it's a guy I know. I won't mention his name but he says, I'm not going home today. And I said, what do you mean, man? You're not going home? He said, I'm not going home. And I said, what do you mean? Like, you're just going to go to a hotel? He meant I'm not going back home to my wife and my child.
Oh, my.
And he was like, it's the end. This is it. We've been going through all this stuff over all this time. And, now he's in the strip club, right? He's coming because he wants to, just express and maybe hedonistically deal with something. But he's like, I'm gone. And we sat there, booty shaking in the next room. You hear me? Drinks on the table. And we talked about God and ministered and shared. And I listened. And that dude has been with his wife ever since that day. That was 16 years ago. And then I asked myself, what would have happened if I'd have just kept my butt up in the four walls of the church and said to myself that I couldn't come here because these folk, and here comes the being there for a brother. Here comes the reconnecting. Hopefully in some way, it wasn't just me. It was just God. It wasn't me, but God was just using me in that time. But bringing this family. Now there's wholeness for this child, which means you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And that was outside of the church.
Because that's where it is. Ministry is not always for the inside. Ministry needs to be done on the outside, where we're out in the community dealing with people, even attending events such as, because there's some events that I'm invited to and I'll be like, I ain't going. And the Spirit say, you going. So I get up and go. But you never know whose life you would change in that moment. Because I've been in those places where people look at you, why you going there? You supposed to be a preacher. You supposed to be this. I go where God tells me to go, because if he send me somewhere, somebody somewhere or wherever I'm going needs something that he has for them. And those are the very moments that people miss because they're so concerned about doing it only in the church, or only doing it behind the pulpit, or only doing it because somebody's going to know your name and be seen. My best work is when don't nobody know who I am, when don't nobody know what I've done, and I don't care for them to know. I don't have to be up front. I love to be behind the scenes. And I always tell people this show was the hardest thing for me to do because I don't like to be out front. I like to do things, just let me do what he tell me to do and let me go. But there comes a point also where when God is using you to a certain level, he will bring you up front. He will ask you to do some things and you crossing your eyes and you like, Lord, really? And I always talk about my retirement. You want me to do what? Because those are the things how he uses you. So now I'm free to do whatever he asks me to do, whenever he wants me to do it. I don't have to put in a time off request. I don't have to see if somebody else comes. I don't have to do all that. If he say, Yolanda, wake up and I need you to go do this, I'm waking up and I'm going to do that. Because that's how ministry is. Ministry is also being available for when he wants you to be available. So it's just how he works, and that's how ministry rolls sometimes. So
interesting, because like even when you talk about things like Juneteenth, right, which is coming up, and for everybody who is listening, Juneteenth is, if you don't know, this is the second year which we will celebrate Juneteenth as a national holiday, celebrating the end of enslavement or slavery in America. And I always tell people that when we celebrate Juneteenth, we're not just celebrating the end of slavery, but we should be recommitting ourselves to something, and that is the end of structural racism. You know what I mean? We got something to do. But at the same time, this notion when you're talking about ministry and you're talking about gifting. So I'm a historian. And at times someone might say, well, okay, how does history factor into this? And I used to, so it's great. So how do I say this? All right. So you ever make a deal with God? Like if you do this, God, I'll do this.
I was told never to do that.
I did it once and I don't ever do it again. Well, I probably did it 85 times in college where I said, God, if you keep me from throwing up, I will never drink again. And then I still did. So I would say that. But in terms of my non-inebriated self, there's a few times. And one of them was this, where I'm sitting here like, okay, I don't understand where you want me to go, God. I have no clue at all, but I have to be faithful and walk in the direction that you want me to walk. And so opening up the ability to use history as a tool. So I was in seminary at Claremont School of Theology, and I flunked out. And most people be like, how did Dr. Walker flunk out of graduate school in seminary of all things? You would think he's already got a PhD in history. I've seen him do his thing. You see, I didn't own it for myself. I didn't know where my gifting was going to fit. So I was trying to be somebody else. And then once I got out of there, and not just because of that place, but I started getting freer and started realizing that when the Holy Spirit gets in me and I'm up there, I can weave that history stuff into a narrative about God that is my style. It's what Daniel Walker does. It's not like Reverend C.L. Franklin. He's different. He got a different flow that he does. And there was a way in which he could flow to make it do what it's supposed to do. And I used to be really intimidated by that as a speaker. So even though, I speak and people, my goal, my model for great speaking was always preachers. It was preachers. If somebody, people who have Zig Ziglar and Tony Robbins and all these other people were supposed to be great motivation speakers. For me, it was watching Black preachers work the word. I mean, and making it ride. You know what I'm talking about? Yo, them times when the brothers and sisters can get that scripture going and they're doing their exegesis and their hermeneutics and they are working it out and the Spirit is there and they're being critical at the same time, but they know where they're going and they're going to take you to that place and drop you off. So I always saw that as the paradigm, the model of great speaking. You couldn't bring me anybody else other than great preachers as folk, because they were connected to humans. Mm-hmm. And these messages weren't just idle messages put out in the atmosphere, but they were said to people who were in the midst of struggles, who needed motivation and a strategy. Mm-hmm. And I love when I see people, when you talk about Gardner Taylor, when you talk about all these different people, you talk about just different individuals in the faith who have been able to talk about it and take it to the highness of the Spirit and the music and everything else, but keep you very much in tune on what we have to do. So that, what do we always talk about? You go and you hear this message and afterwards you're feeling so great. And then 10 minutes later, somebody say, what did the preacher say? And you go,
where was you at?
Versus I was moved and I also have some marching orders on what I can do.
Yes.
And seeing King, seeing Prathia Hall, seeing those types of individuals, or studying them, because I wasn't old enough to see them in action, but studying them and watching them made me, and people like Floyd Flake, who ended up being, I'm an AME, African Methodist Episcopal, bam. Anyway, but Floyd Flake, a congressman and pastor of a church in Queens, New York. And when I used to live in New York, I used to work in Queens for the New York City Economic Development Corporation. And here I could see this church, which owned shopping centers, a church which gave out microloans, a church which was on the tip of everyone's tongue when it talked about social justice or the police or whatever else, because of engaged ministry, a church where the pastor was also, in this case, ran for elective office, became a congressman, and then was able to leverage, but a player who was able, kind of like Adam Clayton Powell, these other people were able to fuse all the stuff together. And then once again, that prophetic speak truth to power, righteous indignation that we get from the long history of the Black church. That's what I always, when I was like, those are the people, you know what I mean? That's, and I think it was always not being able to live up to what that model was, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
you know,
Because
but
we were given a different word back then than the words we get today. The words that we receive, especially growing up in church, the words we received then made us do better. It corrected our behavior, it corrected our attitudes. The words that we get today, many of the places today, it's all about entertainment. You know, we're so wrapped up in entertaining when people are dying because they don't have that word of correction. And then when you try to give that word of correction in the way that God has addressed it to be given, then you have people upset, or they no longer hear what you have to say. So there is no longer that part of accountability. But if we go back to where we came from, back in the roots, that's what our people did. Our ancestors went to church. That's what they did. That's where they got their learning, their correction, their understanding, their wisdom, their knowledge. That's where it came from.
And see, you bring a Reverend Yo, it's so tight, because that notion of the 360-degree church, you know, that is the building, but it's the body, right? Mm-hmm. That 360-degree church, when you're talking about, that's where you got your education. That's where you got your this. Those doors used to not close. And I mean that in the sense that there was always something going on. Mm-hmm. Remember, churches, and I say this is no diss to churches. I worked sometimes at the Center for Religion and Civic Culture for about 16 years down there at USC, giving up to my homegirl.
We love all churches. We love all people.
Yeah, but the notion of how we begin to move forward in terms of looking at a model of church engagement that is about today and the future, that is holistic, and understands that I got mental health issues that maybe I can't deal with the church. I need to go and talk to somebody at San Bernardino County Behavioral Sciences that understands that when I need a house, it's not just put your $5 here and the Lord will. No, it's put your $5 and keep putting your $5 and add up your $5, and a certain point you'll get 3%. And at the 3%, you need to be able to go ahead and talk to a loan person and be able to get your house. You know, just those notions. And so I think that this thing is so beautiful that we have, once we begin to talk to, and I say I have problems sometimes because I grew up a little too traditional. And what I mean by that is, like, it's still very uncomfortable for me, Daniel Walker. I'm getting used to it, to go to church without a tie on. Like it just, and I know, and I'm doing it now more, and I'll, you know, even like, what, you know, I'll do some, even, you know, but it's like I'm growing into being able to be in the pulpit without a tie on, right? Because to me, it was this reverence almost. It was that, and to be literally, this is a tie and black shoes for me. You know what I mean? Like you can't have no red shoes on, not be no, you know, you
well, that has changed.
Yeah. And I have to learn that it's different. Just like I have learned that pastors, and this is one thing I give pastors, a lot more pastors are teachers now, which is a good thing. And they're more like, I don't have to give you the gravy and get all the rest of the stuff, because I'm going to take you and I want you to look here and I want you to read it with me, and I want us to decipher and work this thing out, almost as if we're in Bible study, but we're at 11 o'clock service on Sunday. And I remember the first person I ever saw doing that was Pastor Chuck Singleton at Loveland. I remember Chuck, right? I'm right. Yeah, Loveland. And I remember going. Yeah, I remember
going in Sierra, I think it was.
Yeah. And I was at Baseline and Citrus, Bethel AME 262 Baseline Avenue, Bethel AME Church. You know what I mean? And I just remember going one time, and he didn't just sit up at the pulpit and he walked around with the Bible open and he talked about it. I didn't know what that was. I had never seen anybody do that. I had seen Fred Price do it on TV.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But I had never seen anybody do that. And that opened up something for me, right? That one can be a teacher in that way, but also I go back to, I still believe in the fire of the Black church. You know what I mean? I think that there are times when I was showing my students last night this scene of Jesse Jackson at Tinley Memorial Church in Philadelphia, Albert Tinley, that Tinley Memorial, in 1983, during his run for his first presidential election. And he gave this sermon / speech about rocks lying on the road. And he was talking about the whole issue of Black, Latino, young people not being registered to vote. And he talked about Ronald Reagan winning in 1980. And he said, in this state, he didn't win because he was smarter or because what? He won because 1 million Black people were not registered to vote. 500,000 Latinos were not registered to vote. This many people were not registered to vote. Then he just kept going, just rocks lying by the side of the road, just rocks lying about the side of the road. Then he starts weaving in this whole story of David and Goliath, this God biscuit, this rocks on the side of the road. And he's dropping each piece of it. And as you're going, at first I'm going, and I know my students going, he sounds too much like a preacher. How are you going to run for president? Sound like a preacher. But then he's able to take it and give you foreign policy and give you in a spirit, in a way. And in the end, that whole rocks lying by the road, rocks lying by the road. And you come away feeling like I'm not going to be one of them rocks lying by the road. I need to go get registered because I can't. Busy. So I recognize the beauty and power that I've come from, that tradition of the Black church. I do not run away from it in any way, shape, or form because I understand its power. Mm-hmm. And I know that young people, some of them have not seen it function like that before. And I know yesterday when they were watching, I'm showing the video and I'm watching them. The lights are off, but I'm watching their reaction. And they're just looking, going, I didn't know that a religious whatever, and they didn't know really who Jesse Jackson was because they got the present view of Jesse Jackson, not the Jesse Jackson that we had when we used to be like, I am somebody, you know what I mean? I am somebody. The ghetto, I was born in the ghetto, but the ghetto was not born in me.
Born in me.
A prophetic message from a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, engaging a secular world around justice, around economics, around politics, but still steeped in the traditions of the Black church. So I don't run from it. You know what I mean? And act as if that's not it. If some days I sound like C.L. Franklin and maybe one or two riffs, but I hope I'm also creating my own legacy in how I verbally, rhetorically attack the word and whatever else. But it's about being free. You know, it's about being free. So, and I say all that to say, going back to Judy, it's about history. If I can embrace my history, all the way through, it gives me the power to move forward. Yes. Because I understand that my people have already accomplished something. And so all the question is, what am I going to add to the legacy? Right? Versus we've never done nothing. Just saying.
But it's to the point where I don't think people really understand today, and it's not, some do, some don't, especially some of our younger generation. What does it mean to leave a legacy of what you have now? Because my goal, and I just can let the world know because it's true. My goal is when I leave this earth that I did everything in that dash that the Lord has had me to do. I want to complete my dash from the beginning, from the day I was born, everything in the middle of that dash to the end. And when I leave here, I want to leave a legacy of what he gave me to do. So when my generation, my kids, and my great grandkids are down the line can be like, that was my grandmother, that was my great grandmother. This is what she wrote. This is what she did. This is what she said. Instead of just them dying, and then what else is there? We have to leave a legacy that follows.
And you know, it's so funny, yo, because when we have kids, right? If you're a person who's involved, like whether it be church, community activism, whatever, the kids are usually like, I hate going to these places with you. You know what I mean? Why you dragging me all these places? All you doing is talking.
Why you doing in that heat with them hot dresses on and them socks rolled down from Cherimoya to up on well, now it's, I don't even think, is it still highing up through there? Or is it the 210 freeway now?
But walking up but it's like all that is culture.
Yeah.
You know, like you remember for us growing up in Fontana, the IE, we could all have these understandings, right? You're like, did you go to Community Baptist, or did you go to Bethel, or did you go to over here, or did you go over here? And I always tell people it's crazy because they don't understand how we knew each other. And what I mean by that is, if I didn't know you from my church family, if I didn't know you from Head Start, if I didn't know you from living on my street, or being related to me because your cousin married one of my cousins, there's almost no other. Everybody was connected in some way.
Some type of, even if we didn't all go to the same churches, we were all from the same community because we went to the Kojic church. And I know some went to the AME church that was on Baseline. But we were all, when we came back to that neighborhood, we were all family there.
Yes.
That's where family was. Family was important when we got back there. Because that was the unity where we were together, even going to the faux high, the faux junior high, all of that. we knew who we were, because
Yeah.
when we got back to the tracks, that was us. Don't come in invading. If you wasn't from there, don't even try it.
And you knew, like, even at school, whether you went to Sequoia or Alder or Fodia or whatever else,
Any
you
of
knew
them.
this teacher can be looking at you somewhere and not think, you know what, you're like, I've been going to vacation Bible school with that person for my whole life. I know them. Their mom was the head of the youth department. If I mess up, she gonna say, because my mother was always the head of the youth department. And so, you know, everybody in our church, that's Mama Coleman, that's Miss Coleman. She's always the head of the youth department. And I didn't realize, because you don't think about it when you're a kid, but you're a certain age. I'm like, my mother's the head of the youth department. She's only like 32. Right? But you think because they're older, because it's your, and now I'm thinking because I'm older than 32, asking myself, if I would have thought I would have something to say to young people at 32.
I'm telling you, that's our life was family, and that's what it was all about. So when we talk about family and we talk about motherhood and fatherhood, it stems from what we got as children. Because for us, we went to Bethlehem Temple Church of God in Christ in Fontana. That's the church that we went to. That's the church I grew up in. And just to know, no matter what we got from Bethel or what we got, from Bethlehem, or what we got from Bethel or what they got from community, when we came together, we knew who was the Sunday school teacher at whatever church. We knew who was on the deacon boards. We knew who was on the mother's board. We knew all that. We knew if we got in trouble on Chermoria, by the time we got to Jacaranda, somebody done whooped us. Or, if we didn't get whooped going down the whole aisles, because we were family. Auntie Irma was the candy lady. It's just certain things that it's just how it was when you talk about that.
Yeah, you're like David Randolph's group, like 2 years under me. So David Randolph, his mother, Miss Randolph, was my second grade teacher, but she was also on the usher board at this other church in Moon Rice. Was so mean because on the usher board she was. And I come into first grade like this because Miss Randolph, who would be, don't you say nothing, don't you stand, wait. We ain't let nobody in yet because they ain't done preaching. Right? And so it's so funny because you talk about history, you talk about like fatherhood. So most people know, if they know me or follow me, or my dad wasn't in my life until I was about 11 years old. My dad was, he just wasn't. He was absentee. He was absentee. He and my mother were never married. They met in high school. My mother had my older brother by a different person before him. My mother and him were never married. My dad never, up until I was 11, he wasn't around. And what I mean by I wasn't around, I was just telling these young people today, my dad would come, take me to Magic Mountain or something like that. And then he'd say, I'll be back next week. And he wouldn't come back for 2 or 3 years. And he just lived in LA and I lived in the IE. When you're a little kid and you don't know how far it is, it really is like, okay, he lives really far away. And when you get a little bit older and you realize that some people drive every single morning to go to work. And then my daddy can't do that to come and see me. And you start, so at age 11,
that stuff together.
Yeah. And so, I might as well say, because I tell everybody the same story. My mother had 5 kids by 4 different men before she was 25 years old. My older brother never saw his father in his life. My sister and I have the same father, but he didn't come into my life till I was about 11. Once he did come into my life at 11, he stayed until he died 10 years ago. The only father that lived in my house as my father, because my mother and father were never married. They never lived in a house together. My mother never lived with my older brother's father. My mother was a victim of incest, her father. And so she made some really poor decisions early because she didn't have the ability to really process many things. And so my mother met my youngest brother's father while she was pregnant with me, working as a stripper off Western in a strip club. They then created a lie that I was his son, because who wants to come and tell their parents or their family that they done fell in love with a stripper who's pregnant and the baby's not theirs? So he comes up with a story that I'm his. It could be like, oh, great, because now you got a dad. But then it means I had this confusion because I had 2 different last names going up in school. Sometimes I was Daniel Leitner, sometimes I was Daniel Walker. And then the only father, that dude who only lived with us for about 1.5 years, left to go spend the next 47 years in the California Department of Corrections for murder. And then my mother got pregnant again. And my mother hid the pregnancy and then gave him up for adoption. And my brother exists somewhere, which I don't even know where he is. And so this issue of fatherhood for me was really, really, I wanted to get it right. I was very much concerned about being a good father. And then you get in a relationship and things didn't work out and we get a divorce. And now I'm sitting in a situation where in my mind, I'm going to always be in the same house as my kids because my dad wasn't. And now I'm not. And everything from court, everything from visitation, everything from being committed to I'm going to be there no matter what, and I'm going to work this thing out, driving my kids to school, sometimes from the IE to LA every single day for 1 year to go to school just to be like they needed to get to school at a certain time. And their mother who lives in LA had to get to work at another time. And I just did that. But that sacrifice piece, right? And I'm not giving myself any dap about it. I messed up so many times. I mean, so many times. Your children only look at you based on who you are. They don't care about who your father was, your grandfather. And they're like, you're not there every single day. I want somebody who tucks me in every day. And because you and my mother are not together, that means that's not the case. What did you do to mess it up? You got all that guilt as a person going on, plus my paradigm of what I thought I was going to be. You know what I mean? I remember telling myself I was never going to whip my kids. Then I got my son. You know what I mean?
I never whipped mine, ever.
Listen, my daughter, no,
Never.
you know, but just the notion of you start with a paradigm and then the difference is what it is. Then you have this whole guilt issue about what you didn't do. Here's who I thought I was going to be. Here's who I am as a father.
Yeah.
And then having to go through serious counseling with my kids, with my ex-wife, with one kid, two kids, the triad, the four, all the rest of these things to work through and work out stuff. And we have gone to counseling 4 years. My kids and I are great right now. I tell people I am a good father. I'm a good father. I'm a great father. I own that. We all have struggles and stuff. I had to learn to figure it out correctly. And I had to access some services, specifically counseling and other things, because I would bring into my relationship with my kids my issues about other things, their mother, you name it. I had to learn how to do all that to be a better father. And that also meant sitting in counseling sessions and hearing my kids say things about me that hurt me to the core. But I had to realize that I had also hurt them. And I had to get out of the defensive mode and the whole Daniel Walker and I'm somebody and people call me this and say, but what are you to your children and how do they see you? And literally clamp down. I remember the day when I said, I'm not going to answer the phone anymore when I'm with my kids. They were about 10 or 11. And from there till about 18, if I was in their presence, I did not answer the phone. Why? Because I don't live with them all the time. When I'm with them, that time is theirs. I can't be like, well, I got to meet, well, I got to talk to somebody, well, I got to be, all those things are on hold. People still mess with me today when they be like, I try to get in contact, you don't ever answer your phone, because I got into this habit and I just be like, I put it on silent and I don't worry about it. Because that's how you can make your phone run your life versus you running your life. And that phone was running my life and causing, I pick up my kids and then all of a sudden I'm on the phone for 3 hours. Texting, calling, emails, I got to take care of this. That's not quality time. So making those decisions about what is may seem uncomfortable to me at the moment, but have yielded so much. My kids talk about, I remember when you did that, Daddy. I didn't make an announcement to them. I just started doing it, but they recognize it. To this day, they 22 and 23. My son will be 22 tomorrow. They recognize it. And they see it. But I'm saying to fathers, I wish. No, I don't wish. I don't wish that I had started off great. I don't wish that I was perfect because I wouldn't know nothing. I wouldn't have learned anything. Yeah. I gained wisdom. My son is going to be a great father. My daughter is going to marry a dude who is the right type of man, not because I've been perfect, but because they've seen me grow and be committed to growth. Okay. That's it. I'm not perfect. I'm not there, but they have seen me grow. My kids can say, I remember when, and I remember now. And it doesn't mean I was so terrible, because my criteria was always comparing myself to somebody else. Oh, you see this, but I pay child support every single month. I ain't never missed child support. My kids, they ain't worried about that. They worry about, Daddy, are you there? They ain't worried about that. Well, this dude, he don't even such and such, and he ain't seeing his kids. That's my criteria. My criteria should be the best, not, I started using the words. You know what I mean? Such, their father don't never take them nowhere. This is all this. I had to get back, break myself a little bit, not a little bit, a whole lot. I mean, I had to be broken and then realize that I can't take the mentality of the way I function in the world to how I function with my children. I have a different spirit, and I have to have a different spirit when it comes to them. So many times I can get into that take care of business spirit because I'm in all these things and I'm picking them up or we're doing something and I'm just in that mode. I have to break and say, that stops. It's my time with my children. This is my time listening to them saying, this is what's going on in my school. These are the names that I need to remember. When they bring this story up again, I need to not go like, oh, Sophia, you having problems? I never heard of that. And this kid done already told you 5 different times about his interaction, either friendly or not friendly with their friend, but you didn't know. I start recognizing all that stuff. And I'm saying as brothers, we got to recognize that we have a lot to do because we have a history of a whole lot of brothers who ain't done the right thing. You know, our fathers, our uncles, many us, I own it, me, and then get better. My mantra every day and everything is better today than I was yesterday. That's the most simplest thing I live. Better today than I was yesterday. And if I am not, I'm picking it back up and trying again the next day. That is my only, every single day. That's all I wake up. And people, you read all these books, I say, no, better today than I was yesterday. And if somehow I fall, I'm going to make up for it the next day. If you keep doing that, brothers, and you're out there trying to be a good father, a good husband, a good grandfather, a good partner, a good friend, a good whatever else, better today than you were yesterday.
That's it. That's it. So I know you have another appointment. That's just how important he is. So I know you have another appointment, and I absolutely thank you for spending your time with me today, explaining fatherhood and Juneteenth and men in general, and all the ministry stuff we cracked up for a while. That's why we was late. But hey, we got here.
And
we was live, and we was just talking and talk. We wasn't even live yet. So
there's a whole nother show that y'all don't even know about. There's a whole nother show.
We spent the whole other 15 minutes. Help us, Lord. So before I close out, do you have anything else you would like for the people to know?
Just keep pushing. And I'm saying that about everything. I mean, some people are dealing with mental health issues right now. Keep pushing. Access services. Go try it. If you're trying to change your community, keep pushing. If you're trying to get to a higher level of understanding of yourself as a spiritual being in the world, keep pushing. Just keep better today than you were yesterday. I guarantee you 365 days from now, you will be a infinitely better human being.
Amen to that. So with that being said, as I do every week, once again, I thank you, Dr. Daniel, for joining me on today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know you're a busy person, so I'm so glad I even got the opportunity to book you in here. So listen, I just thank you once again.
Thank you for what you do, and keep doing it all the way through, okay?
I'm going to keep pushing as long as he tells me. So once again, thank you for joining me today on God's Show with me, Rev Yo. And as I do every week, I will do the same today. I want you to be brave, be strong, and be different. Ask and it will be given unto you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. Believe in yourself and encourage yourself. But in all things, remember, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Peace and blessings, my brothers and sisters. Until next week, have a blessed day. Bye.
Bye-bye, Rev.